So this is the chem lab, which is where I'm doing my art project. This is the fume hood. The fume hood pulls up all the extra gases so that I don't breathe in bad gas. The way we set up this experiment is first, we take a piece of aluminum from my grand old box of supplies. These aluminum I have already sanded to the shape I want them at, with nice round corners. Now what I need to do, as you can see this nice piece, is sand that down. Now what happens with aluminum is that it readily forms aluminum oxide with the air. So you have to get rid of that oxide layer by sanding it down. And this is easiest to do before I put on my nice rubber chemical gloves. Tried to do that earlier and make big holes and waste a pair of gloves. That's never good. So what I have here, I've finished my sanding, and in this nice little beaker is nitric acid. I'm going to be very careful to not get that on the camera. Now, the reason for the nitric acid is once again to get rid of that aluminum oxide layer. This step is surprisingly important. If not done, then, well, it's not going to anodize well. But what I have is I have a 12-volt power supply. Now, this power supply is the essence of my experiment. And I also have my goggles, which I need to put on. Now, the power supply is basically what anodizes it. Here, we have a nice beaker of sulfuric acid. Now, the sulfuric acid acts as a catalyst and a medium for the anodizing process. This is the negative anode. This is our base. This doesn't get anodized, but it does make a nice effect, as you can see over here. When this one gets put through the dye, it gets a nice kind of grainy effect with color. Not exactly what I was going for, but it's cool. And the only requirement is that when I put this in the acid, is that it is fully submerged. So now, my positive power supply. This one has been, well, corroded. Because of that, I can't put it in the acid anymore. So what I do is I take some aluminum wire. You don't want really anything but aluminum in the acid, or else it will get contaminated. And what I do is I turn that into a little piece of connection wire, so the current can flow directly from the wire to the piece. Okay, so I've put my nice piece of aluminum with wire into my beaker of sulfuric acid. The anode is the black wire. The cathode is the red wire. It's very important that the anode and cathode do not touch, because if they touch, the current will just go right through and there will be no anodization. The anodization works because of the electrons jumping through the sulfuric acid solution from one node to the other. Then I set this at 12 volts, turn that on, see that within the reaction there are bubbles. The bubbles indicate that the anodization is occurring. The bubbles actually occur on the anode. Bubbles right there. Bubbles right there. Over here, we have a hot plate. Now, a hot plate is just simply, well, makes things hot. We're going to set it at about 3.5 to about 150 degrees, and this is what we want the dye at. If the dye isn't warm, the metal won't take it in. I've found that the closer it is to 150 degrees, the better off it is. We have a purple dye. Over here, we have orange dye that I'm not going to be using today. I'm using RIT dye, which we can see in my handy-dandy box. RIT dye, concentrated powder. It's important that your dye is concentrated, because the more concentrated it is, the better color you will have. Now, while we're waiting for this experiment to go, we are going to look at some stuff that I made last time. These ones have been anodized and dyed. You can see the nice color. Unfortunately, this color rubs off. You can see the color right on my finger. Now, the way we get rid of that is that we rinse it with distilled water. It's important to use distilled in all your experiments, because if you don't, then you can get contaminations. Tap water is full of all sorts of things. I'm lucky that I'm in a chem lab, and over in that door over there, there is a distilled water machine maker. It's wonderful. I love it. It's my friend. Waste beaker. Now, your waste beaker is your best friend. You can put anything into it as long as it's mostly water. You can see all the little other leftover aluminum pieces I have made. You don't really want this stuff going down the drain, considering that it has been dosed in nitric acid, sulfuric acid, and dye. So I'm going to rinse that off. Now, this is just a handy-dandy sprayer thing, as I rinse off the extra dye. And the color is draining a slight bit, but not much. This is one of the best ones I've had yet. And now I just put that out to dry. nice and colored. Certain dyes take better than others. I've found that red and yellow take really nicely, while blues and greens can just seem darker. This might have to do with the silver nature of the aluminum and how it shines through. So the more you leave it in the dye, the better color you will get. The blue dye has given me some problems. It hasn't taken very well. Not as clearly blue as I would like it to be. That'll be a lesson for next time. But on this side, it's only got splotches of blue. Still a nice, cool effect. I kind of like it. A lot of the anodization processes will tell you to boil them. I find there is no benefit to boiling. It might just be that the pieces are so small, it mostly just saps all the color. If you simply just let them dry after being in the dye, and then rinse them off the next day, they will be fine. Here I finished rinsing these. They look rather nice. I'm quite proud of them. And now over here we can see some of the attempts of my failed experiment. I was using just aluminum foil as an anode, and it was actually very nicely colored. This may be incorporated into the project later. So our reaction is still going. It's still fizzing nicely. It's been about 10 minutes, but because of the nature of how well it is fizzing at the moment, I'm going to leave it. This is a little over 150 degrees. Turn the dial down from 3.5 to 3. Maybe I was a little overexcited. What I've done is I've turned off the power supply. Turn off the power supply before you even think of touching your jar. What I've done is I've rinsed this off with distilled water. I'm putting this in the dye, and I'm going to let that sit there for maybe half an hour. The longer you let it sit in the dye, the better. So here our piece has actually been in the dye for a little while now. It is turning purple.